For today and tomorrow, we are going to spend some time learning about the Buddha's teachings about what's called the four boundless hearts or the four immeasurable minds. So these four, first I'll give you their names as they are more commonly known in the West. More commonly known in the West is often the Pali version of these four. Pali and Sanskrit are the two main Indian languages for recording the ancient teachings of the Buddha. So Pali is the language of the Buddhism that developed into what we now know as Theravada. Then Sanskrit is the language that is used to record the teachings in the traditions that we now identify as Mahayana. A branch of the Mahayana is what we call Vajrayana. So anyway, in Pali, the four is Metta, then Karuna, then Mudita, and Upekkha. So Metta is usually translated as love or loving kindness. Karuna is translated as usually as compassion. Mudita is often translated as joy or sympathetic joy. That means to be joyful for someone. In that sense, sympathetic. Then the fourth one is the fourth one is equanimity. So these are the four immeasurables here. The fourth. Oh, the fourth, the Pali. Sorry, yes, is Upekkha. So Upekkha is often translated as equanimity. So an equal mind. So we're going to spend this weekend kind of learning more about Buddha's teachings about these four immeasurable minds. And they are the basis for cultivating the Bodhi mind, the awakened mind called bodhicitta. And then a way to formalize your commitment to the way of the Bodhisattva is to take the Bodhisattva vow in a ceremony. And that will be next weekend with Khenchen Konja Gyaltsen Rinpoche. So these four immeasurables, they are also sometimes known as the four divine abodes, Brahma Viharas. So Brahma carries the connotation of divine. So it's the four divine abodes or the four divine dwellings. To dwell in, to live in. Yeah. In India, both Hindus and Buddhists and other Indian religions talk about the existence of this being called Brahma. They equally all have this, except that there's a being called Brahma. But as to how each religion thinks about how exactly what are the powers of Brahma, exactly what are the functions of Brahma, or exactly what is the role of Brahma, they differ. In Buddhism, Brahma is seen as a highly evolved being, but yet not yet free from the cycle of birth and death. But here, Brahma carries the connotation of divine. So in that way, the Buddha defines, what is divinity? Divinity is basically to be divine is to dwell in these four places, places of the heart, these four places, these four immeasurables. You could say that the Buddha was less interested in elaborating on Brahma as a specific being that has this power and that power, and if you, you know, pray to Brahma in this way, you can get that. If you make this offering to Brahma, you can get that. You can say that the Buddha was not so interested in that aspect of Brahma. Rather, he says, Brahma is Brahma because he dwells in such a state of mind, in such a heart space, and by extension, all of you can also dwell in such a heart space, in such a divine dwelling. Interestingly, in Hindu religion in India, Brahma is often given the role of the source and the creator of this world, but he's not very popular among Hindus. There's in India, if you've ever been to India, you know, there's as many temples and shrines as there are cows, as there are people, which is a lot. But out of all those temples, only 2 are dedicated to Brahma. Very strange. It's just a footnote, okay? Not really our. In fact, Brahma has the greatest following in Thailand. And then from Thailand, it spread to like various Asian communities in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in Malaysia, in Singapore. People all go to this one Brahma shrine that is in the parking lot. Well, used to be now. It started as a Brahma shrine in the parking lot of a hotel.
Parking.
Yeah, parking lot. In Bangkok, Erawan Hotel. The hotel was not doing too well, you know. Then some shaman told them, you have to make a shrine for Brahma. So then the hotel boss did that, you know. Then his business blossomed, and then now like people come from everywhere to go ask for favors from Brahma. But as I said, you know, the Buddha seems like he's also interested in this aspect of Brahma. He's more interested in helping us how to be Brahma-like, how to be like Brahma. And to do that, he says, you know, Brahma is Brahma because Brahma dwells in these 4 heart places, in loving kindness, in compassion, in joy, and in equanimity. So all Buddhist traditions accept what we have said so far. And then in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, and then by extension Vajrayana, it's further said that these 4 immeasurables, they are the basis, the necessary basis for giving rise to what is known as bodhicitta, the awakened mind or the awakening mind. And specifically here is the heart, the mind, the resolve, the determination to achieve Buddhahood. But driven by what? It cannot be driven by, you know, this world sucks. I want to go somewhere else. I'm tired of all you complainers. I'm going now. So it cannot be out of disgust with what you don't like here. And you say, I am moving to Canada, you know, something like that. I don't know what Peruvians said when they're tired of the Peruvian government, you know. In the US, it's very fashionable. Whenever, whatever government they don't like, first thing people say is, I'm moving to Canada. Meanwhile, the Canadians are like, no. Can you just stay where you are? We don't need more of you. So you cannot say, I want to be Buddha because I'm tired of these people. It has to be, I want to be Buddha out of the motivation of these 4 boundless minds, these 4 boundless hearts. So these 4 boundless minds if you want, and when you lean into it more, we should know that there are actually two sides to it. And with these two sides, the same verb we have to use, and the verb is to cultivate. So it's not just, the Buddha is not saying, you should be loving, you should be compassionate, you should be joyful, you should be equanimous. If you don't do that, you'll go to some Buddhist hell. You know, no, Buddha is not saying that at all. Buddha is saying when you cultivate these attitudes, when you learn how to dwell in these four heart spaces, you yourself will see how satisfying it is. So look into it, give it a try, test it out. So it doesn't make you a bad person, a selfish person, you know, a sinful person if you don't feel loving, compassionate, joyful, and equanimous. Not according to the Buddha. The Buddha doesn't condemn you for not feeling this way. But the Buddha does say there are such great advantages when we know how to dwell in these heart spaces. So we want to cultivate them, we want to grow them. So the two aspects of growing or cultivating them, one is to give it deep roots, to give them deep roots. So much so that you can do like formal meditation sessions. Yeah, focus on say one of these four, and you can let it be so deep that the Buddha called it entering into these meditative states, unshakable meditative states. Some of the descriptions of being in this state is like, even people yell at you, take needles and poke your body, you won't feel any of it because your mind is so fully absorbed in. This is called dhyana, samden. So the mind becomes so absorbed. So that's the giving it roots. And the purpose of that, right? I mean, maybe we don't need to take it to the level of, in our training, it involves poking you with needles, or yelling at you, but it's the point is like you won't be so easily kind of pushed away from these art spaces. In other words, right? You won't get angry so easily for loving kindness. The opposite of that. Compassion, the opposite of that is indifference. So that indifference, anger, partiality, don't have such a hold on you. So, and for that to happen, you need to deepen these four. The other aspect is to train in the impartial aspect. So the boundless aspect. It covers everyone. There's no bias. So these are the two kind of parts of cultivating these four boundless minds. In the early texts, in the earliest text that we have, where the Buddha talked about the advantages and the necessity of cultivating these four immeasurable minds, interestingly, and actually not just for the four immeasurable minds, but overall, there's not a lot of like specific instructions and techniques recorded. Yeah. This is all the work of later practitioners, great masters having to, there's no real meditation manual in the Buddhist texts. Like you should do this, then do this, then do this. That is left to later. So same with these four immeasurables. Buddha talked about what are the four immeasurables? What are the advantages of being able to go into those spaces easily? And then what is the flaws, the mistakes that may arise when you can access these four? And so there's a lot of teachings like that, but there's no. And then now to practice this, you breathe in and out first, and then you do this and that. But for sure, mm, the over generations, different manuals have been composed and used. And often the way to cultivate these four immeasurables is to do these kind of mental repetition of phrases to help us contemplate, to help us think about these qualities. And so let's do the one for loving kindness based on some words written by a contemporary Buddhist monk teacher that lived in Southern California. This Thai tradition monk, Ajahn Thanisaro. He has a website called Access to Insight. And very nice, also written in such a way that I think is easier for us to understand. So no point me making up new things, I'm just going to read from him and then we'll do these contemplations and get a taste of how this is actually practiced. So let's do this very short contemplation. Basically, I will say the words and you should relate to the words as like as they say, it's like a finger, pointing us to something. The moon usually said it's like a finger pointing you to the moon. So what you are trying to actually see is not the finger, but it's the moon. But then, of course, you start with the finger to see where the finger is pointing to, and then once you get the general direction, you drop the finger. Don't spend time going, oh, that finger. Maybe I should give this person a certificate for a manicure. Or maybe I should ask, where does she does her manicure? So we want to now sit in a comfortable way. To say sit in a comfortable way is not just simply comfortable. If that was the case, then you should have brought your pajamas and your, you know, pillow. But it's a balance between, basically the body is placed in a position where it doesn't need to move around a lot. It doesn't, you're not putting stress on your body, but your body is in a place, in a good place. So sit in a stable and balanced way with your body upright, your chest and kind of open, your chin tucked in a little bit. So your neck is a little, almost like a little hook. No need to close your eyes, but soften your gaze. Sometimes when we close our eyes fully, when we're trying to quote unquote meditate, it often leads to drowsiness. So hold a soft gaze, specifically with your eyes, looking in the general vicinity where the nose is pointing, your lips and teeth are together, and your tongue is resting on the palate of your mouth. And when you're ready, take a few deep breaths. Inhale, exhale deeply. Then let breath just do its own thing naturally. Inhale, exhale, without the need to force it this way or that way. As body becomes more relaxed and present, you will also notice how your breath evens out and become more smooth. As a result, your mind also naturally quiets down. You don't have to yell at the mind to shut up. Neither do you have to be dragged around by whatever thought comes up, whatever emotion comes up. So take a few moments to just let body and mind settle, relying on you paying attention to the experience of breath as the reference point. Let breath allow body and mind to settle and rest in their own places. Metta or loving kindness, which is without any desire to possess, knowing well that in the ultimate sense, there is no possession and no possessor, no subject and object of this loving kindness. This knowing is said to be the highest form of loving kindness. Loving kindness is without desire to possess. Loving kindness knows well that in the ultimate sense, there is no possession and no possessor. This is the highest loving kindness. Loving kindness without speaking or thinking of I. Know well that this so called I is a mere delusion, only temporarily appearing and then disappearing and appearing and disappearing. Loving kindness is without selecting and excluding. Knowing well in the fact that when we select and we exclude, then we are creating the opposite of loving kindness, which is dislike, aversion, and all the way to even hatred. Loving kindness embraces all beings, small and great, far and near, whether on earth or in water or in the air. Loving kindness embraces impartially all sentient beings, and not only those who we consider useful, pleasing, or amusing. Loving kindness embraces impartiality towards all sentient beings. Loving kindness embraces all beings, whether they are beings with noble minds or beings with low minds, good or evil. The noble ones and the good, they are embraced by loving kindness because loving kindness flows to them spontaneously. Then even the low minded and the evil minded are included, embraced by this loving kindness, because these are those who are in most need of loving kindness. Loving kindness embraces all beings, knowing well that we are all on the same journey in this circle of existence, that we are all under the power of the same kind of afflictive emotions and the suffering that arises from that. Loving kindness gives comfort, gives wellness, gives happiness to all beings. Loving kindness, the Buddha called the liberation of the heart, the most beautiful of all. Go back to noticing your breath if you need an anchor in case your mind is a little unruly and unwilling to stay here with this cultivation. Any part of this contemplation you can return to, or tune in with your breath, or pay attention to how the body is relaxed, at ease. Let's take a break. 15 minutes. Those of you in the temple here, please turn to page 11. So this is said to be the purification mantra of the Buddha Vajrasattva. This mantra is widely used. Many people practicing Tibetan Buddhism memorize, one of the first things they memorize tend to be this mantra. We can see this chain of words, this mantra, to be a way that can help us recenter, re-present after a break, being scattered. Although with mantras, often we say the explicit meaning of the mantra, right, is not that important. We often say that it's not so much the meaning of the words, but the way the words are chained together is where they are most significant, where the most significance is. The meaning, of course, the words you can find. So briefly, this is the meaning of the words. And it is Om Vajrasattva, preserve the bond, preserve the samaya. There's many ways to understand what samaya means. Here we can say the samaya or the bond is the samaya or the bond to waking up, to becoming Buddha. So you can look at it from that perspective. But from an even more, you could say, ultimate standpoint, you can say, then what is this bond? What is the samaya? What is the promise? It's the bond, it's the samaya, it's the promise of not forgetting our Buddha mind, our actual identity. In that sense, we have a lot of purification to do, because we're always straying from our Buddha nature. We're always wandering off. Instead of being the Buddhas that we are, we prefer other identities, other dramas, other storylines, other masks. So we're always, straying from this bond. Then from that basic straying, then all kinds of strayings are happening all the time. We lie, steal, harm. We forget our commitment to protect others. We even forget our commitment to protect ourselves. So Om Vajrasattva, preserve this bond, preserve this samaya. As you stand before me, Vajrasattva, be firm for me, be greatly pleased for me, deeply nourish me, love me passionately, grant me accomplishment in all matters,
and in all conditions, in all actions, make my mind most excellent. Then there's an exclamation of joy, ha ha ha. Oh. And the Blessed One, the Vajra of all Buddhas, do not abandon. Vajra as a ritual item refers to this. This is a symbolic representation of the Vajra, which is the weapon that is said to be the weapon that destroys all weapons in Indian mythology. And so the Buddha used that mythology to say the ultimate Vajra is the nature of our minds. So that is what will destroy all. Do not abandon me. Be the Vajra holder. Be the one with the great Samaya, with the great bond. Relatively, we are invoking Vajrasattva, the Buddha, that is, you could say, out there. But on the ultimate perspective, we are affirming, we are recognizing the Vajrasattva that we are. So we're telling ourselves to be firm and be faithful to this. Vajrasattva samaya anupalaya Vajrasattva deno vajrishta deno Sundashayo membawa supokayo Rato membawa sarva siddhi membrayata sarva karma sujame Chitam Shreyatu Sarvatataka Vajramame Cha Vajre Bhava Samaya Sadhu. So before we went on break, we did a short exercise contemplating metta or loving kindness. So in terms of practicing or cultivating metta, loving kindness, there are various different other ways, but they're more or less like this. It's like contemplating, working with words that point to experiences that we already have before. And the same, the other three. So if you now please turn to page 8 of this text, there is a prayer, or a contemplation for the four immeasurables. So the first part of this is manam kadang nyampe semchen tamche. So this is the object. Like, who are we training the four immeasurable minds with, in relationship with? Who is it? So to develop or to cultivate the four immeasurables, it is done in relation to objects, towards an object. And here is the object. Ma. Ma is mother. Namkadam nyampe senchen. Namka dang is, so namka is space or sky. Then namka on the one hand, semchen the other hand. They're analogized. So sentient beings, limitless as space is limitless. So that's the object. So infinite space, infinite sentient beings. Then we all have a private list that we exclude, Not this person, not this person. No. Definitely not this person. Sometimes you know them, sometimes you don't know them, but you keep changing this list, Some of the names in there are like, full-time, lifelong membership. So we should work on firing, all of these members on this list. Terminate their membership. You gave them, not that they sign up. But joking aside, it feels like they sign up, These difficult people, we say, they came they took the trouble to come looking for me. They're like, I'm just innocently here minding my own business. Then they came. But the Buddha said, you summoned them. Choices that you have made, summon them. Karma is the most powerful force in this world. Even Buddhas cannot subvert the power of karma. Even the greatest gods cannot subvert the power of karma. They may say they can, they may promise you they can, but not possible.
Ellos,
But the good news is this. As powerful as karma is, it doesn't just accidentally happen. It only kicks into action based on choices that we make. So that's an important thing we have to understand before we do all these other practices. If we don't understand, what Buddha said about karma, then we may be trying to fix problems in a completely mistaken way. Even if you say, but I ordered, the Buddha toolbox. I went to ProMart and it says, Buddha toolbox, So obviously all the instruments in there must fix, the problem. It's not about the instruments. It's about the person using the instrument. And so some of us, think, oh, this toolbox has, is Tibetan flavored, very exotic. Maybe it will work better. Then some of you may say, no. We are Cusquinians, we have our shamanic tradition. The shamanic toolbox works better. Our Gero, toolbox works better. That these toolboxes have been used by different people throughout different parts of time and all that tells us that, of course, not saying, there's nothing at all to the tools. Like a screwdriver, if you use it as a hammer, it's not wrong, but it doesn't work so well. Right? So we're not saying that the tools, whether it's, Tibetan flavored or Gyro's flavored, has no difference. Yes, there is. But more important is, first we need to understand how things work before we try to work them. When we understand how things work, then you can use any toolbox. But instead of learning about how things work, we spend time debating each other, arguing with each other which toolbox works better than which toolbox, That's a complete waste of time. Or we compare toolboxes. These two, they are so similar. They're so different. Again, waste of time. Then when you get those who are selling the toolboxes involved, then even more complicated. Apple is better, Xiaomi is better, But what we really need to know is how things work. That's the main thing the Buddha taught. Buddha Shakyamuni did not appear in a vacuum. He chose a context, a time, a place. And in this case, he chose India. He chose 2,500 years ago. He chose a particular part of India. So, of course, whatever he taught was understood, preserved, transmitted from that context. Then it went to different contexts. So this is the richness of human experience, human cultures, right? Nothing wrong with that. But if we end up learning all these things and don't learn, what makes a Buddha a Buddha? It's not the culture. What makes the Buddha a Buddha is knowledge of how things work. And with the knowledge of how things work, we're talking about two things, two sides, same thing. One, we give the label of emptiness. The other one, we give the label of dependent arising. Emptiness is said to be the essence. Dependent arising is the appearance. Emptiness is not saying, nothing. vacuum. Emptiness is kind of a shock word because it will shock you.
Yeah,
So it's intentional.
la idea.
Take it back. Hey, wake up! Because we don't like to hear emptiness. We like to be fixated. It gives us like security.
Nos da seguridad.
So Buddha chose the word emptiness deliberately. But its meaning can also be
Pero su significado también está relacionado o puede significar apertura,
spaciousness, non-fixity. No situation is so fixed and so unchangeable that you need to be hopeless, depressed. Everything is constantly shifting, changing. Everything that we think is so fixed, so decided, actually is an illusion. So emptiness can also, you can also say, dynamic. But I prefer not to use all these other words first, but to use emptiness because the Buddha chose that word. It's not as if these other words weren't there in the vocabulary for, Prince Siddhartha. It's not like words like spaciousness, openness, not available to him to use. But he did not choose that word because it also needs to have the wake up effect,
Mm-hmm.
But this emptiness as the essence of things doesn't at all cancel out how things appear, how things happen, how experiences take place. All of that is made possible precisely because of emptiness. And how things appear, how things turn up, and how experiences are born. And out of the birth of experiences, the choices that we make, the right choices, the wrong choices, the unclear choices, and the consequences of all these choices. All these are what we call dependent arising. Dependent arising means things don't happen in a haphazard manner. They follow a set of principles. And there we can say karmic causality. Karmic cause and effect. You can also say, of course, like the laws of physics, is also part of this dependent arising. But mainly Buddha did not talk about the laws of physics.
Entonces,
but no contradiction. Buddha wasn't so interested, and also not his department, to teach you laws of physics for you to make planes to fly, Buddha was more interested in the dependent arising of what? The dependent arising of happiness and suffering. The dependent arisings of the heart. How happiness turns up in the heart. How suffering turns up. So we need to understand, this first before we say, oh, I have love for everyone. Especially now, like I have so much compassion for everyone. And then when someone, especially close to you, is suffering, if we forget that first part, then we will be so miserable. Because we desperately want this person not to suffer. We desperately want this person to have happiness. Don't want to accept dependent arising.
No.
We forget dependent arising. Then we hope God will subvert dependent arising. We hope Buddha will subvert karma. Just one case, please. Just this one case, please. Can? Just this one boyfriend, please. Just one. I will never ask for anyone else again. Then 6 months later, maybe it'll switch to now this girlfriend. Not even new boyfriend, now it's girlfriend. Anything is possible. So we completely forget, how things work. We walk around hoping for the impossible. Even worse now, because we have Buddhism, right? Now it's dressed up in some exotic robes. It's like very spiritual. But delusion is still delusion, with or without robes. Delusion is still delusion. Whether it's the Indian toolbox or the Tibetan toolbox, right? Using a Phillips screwdriver to try to, turn your flathead screw. Screwdriver, there are two types: flathead and Phillips.
Yeah.
You take a flathead and it's a Phillips, and you please.
Y agarra.
You'll ruin, and your screw will remain in there. But sometimes, because it's religion, because it's spirituality, you say, but I'm sincere. Yeah, good luck. Sincere or not doesn't help here.
Y pues,
This is a Phillips screw. You have a flathead screwdriver. Maybe if I pray really hard, right before I go to bed, when I wake up, then some miracle will happen. It's like they say, if you drop your phone, in water, you should put it in a bag of rice, right? Put it, then wake up the next day, then during the night, some Asian will come fix your story. Okay, definitely no Asian is going to come fix it for you, but in case it happens, the arroz needs to be not cooked rice, okay, by the way. So, but you cannot say, but this is like very special rice, Yeah, it's cooked. It doesn't work. Things don't work like this, So what the Buddha taught us, how things work and how things don't work. So if we don't understand this, all this talk about the four immeasurables can sound so much like magic, But if we really understand first how things work, then when we cultivate these four immeasurable minds, then the way it can work will work. Okay, now coming back to, the object is all beings without exception, in other words. So on page 8 it says, right? Deva dang deva gyu. So deva dang deva. Deva dang deva gyu dang demper. Okay. So here is the definition for what is metta. What is loving kindness? Which is wishing happiness for others. Wishing well-being towards others. Goodwill. The opposite of enmity, the opposite of animosity, friendliness, feeling warmth. So always with the heart of goodwill, warmness of heart towards all. So this is the definition of metta. So obviously here, right, it doesn't exactly, match what we may think of as love. Not the amour that is the subject of many songs, and many novels and many dramas, And not necessarily even the amour of like, I will die for you. Right? It's not that dramatic. Although, yes, if you practice the four immeasurables and cultivate them into both deep and boundless, yes, you may find yourself in a situation where you will die for someone else without thinking twice. But this is not the definition of metta. Here, metta is this goodwill, warmness, friendly heart. And so, in the in these teachings, they also say, with each of these four, right? There are things to watch out when we're cultivating them. So first of all, for each of these four, there are what is clearly and without any, without needing to explain a lot, all of us will recognize this is the opposite of what we want to cultivate. Yeah? So in the traditional text, this is called the distant enemy. Yeah? Distant, far enemy.
Sí,
Like,
claramente.
like opposite.
Yeah.
Enemy is just a very strong word, but the opposite.
Yeah.
So that one is easy. We don't need a lot of experience or skill to know, oh, this is the opposite of metta. What we really need to watch out for, and this is really very, very like important and profound kind of detail the Buddha gave. He said, what Buddha says, what you really need to watch for is what is called the near enemy of metta. What is near enemy? Another way to put it is not who you think it is, but it's dressed up like it is. So what is the impersonator of metta? Possessive love. Love with agenda. Self-based kind of love. I love you so much. You're so ungrateful. All of us have said that before, okay? Yeah. All of us have felt that, of course. Because that's just, out of like human emotions. So the next time you feel like that, remember, oh, this is Maitri's evil twin. Metta's evil twin. Watch out and say, you, I reject. I want your other twin. Maitri. Metta. Maitri is Sanskrit. So, metta is not. So the future Buddha is called, his name is the one with Maitri. Maitreya. Maitreya. One with Maitri. The Venerable Vignana says, don't wait for this magical being called Maitreya to come, because it's the next Buddha, right? Some Christians say, the second coming of Christ. It's a year, when it's a year. Same, some Buddhists think, Maitreya is something like that. So, Vignana says, Maitreya becomes present when you cultivate Maitreya. That's when the future Buddha has arrived. In another place, when the Buddha taught about the qualities, the benefits of cultivating kindness, he gave a very nice list, which I don't. So when we note these benefits, it's not even so much like then I'm not like presenting you with these benefits like a salesman. But more when we know what it can do, then we also understand more what is it. Often in Buddhist teachings, like teaching something good, then they will say, and then this thing has 12 benefits. And the superficial way to understand is almost like, like a salesman, trying to sell you something. Like people selling you toothpaste. They don't just tell you, that it will protect your gums, your teeth. It says, then people will notice you, then people will like you, then people will be attracted to you. But really, these benefits are explained so that we learn more about it. So what is this? What is this thing? So in a very short teaching the Buddha gave, called the Maitri or the Metta Sutra, Buddha said this. He said, "O monks, there are 11 advantages to be expected when you release your heart, when you liberate your heart through cultivating loving kindness." So very interesting. It says, when you cultivate metta, you release your heart. So right now, our heart, is stuck in the prison. No freedom. Very tight. Very oppressive. Very stressful. So you don't want all of that? You can free your heart by cultivating. Either someone is knocking or someone is repairing. Metta is knocking. He says, by cultivating kindness, by constantly increasing these thoughts, and by expressing kindness, seeing it as something to be treasured, by living your life in correspondence to these feelings, you make them firm. These are the 11. Very, what is the first one? You can sleep calm. I don't know about 2,600 years ago if people had problems with sleeping, but today is one of the biggest problems that everybody has. You go look at Amazon.com. There's so many products they try to sell you to make you sleep better. And whatever online shopping. It's a very serious problem. Human beings have lost the art of sleeping. And it sounds kind of, it might sound kind of like sleeps in comfort. Like not very fancy, right? Not very profound. But if you cannot sleep, everything is worth. This doesn't work so well because you don't speak my dialect of Chinese. But I'll try to explain. Many words in Chinese sound the same, but depending on how it's written, it's completely different. So in Cantonese, native tongue, the word for religion and the word for sleep sounds the same, but completely different the way they're written. So I joke. I say, I don't care what religion you have, or what religion, or this religion, that religion. The most important is sleep, but it's the same word. So it's like we have. So basically, the way we create a word, it's like religion, right? We'll have. So Buddhism is Buddhist religion. Christianity is Christian religion. So in Cantonese, we're like Pat Gao, like Vietnamese, Pat Gao, Gay Dot Gao, Christian religion. So I said, I don't care what Gao you are. Most important is Pan Gao, sleeping. If you cannot sleep, whatever fancy religion you have is useless. So if you cannot sleep, it says, when you cultivate metta, you sleep in comfort. You awake in comfort. Experience no bad dreams. You are dear to human beings. Other humans like you. You are cherished by the gods. The benevolent forces naturally protect you. Fire, poison, and sword cannot touch you. And of course, this one sounds a little magical. But there's something deeper going on there. I think it's talking about, to me, your immune system, your ability to heal, your ability to endure injury is naturally stronger. So, poetically, fire, poison, sword. Stronger. Of course, if you need fire, you still burn, but not so badly. In this tradition, we don't have a practice of now let's test how much metta you have. Let's drink some poison and see you will die. We don't have this tradition, just to be clear. I'm not joking. Religion is a very strange thing, Where I live in North Carolina, in the rural areas, not a lot, but we still had these Christian traditions that take the Bible literally. So in the Bible, it says, if you really have faith in God, you can pick up serpents, you can drink poison. So to this day, there are small Christian groups in North Carolina who do this, like drink poison and handle poisonous snakes. And sometimes 3-4 generations, they are pastors, die because of that. They still continue. That is how much faith people have in religion. Religion is a very strange creature. So just to be clear, we don't have this tradition. The 7th benefit, fire, poison, and sword cannot harm. And then you can concentrate easily. So it's that means, metta, the opposite of metta is prayer. And so ability to focus has to do with how settled your heart is. How are you at ease? Because when you cultivate metta, you are at ease. And when you're at ease, you have to focus is very easy. But when you are triggered, like we would say, it's hard to focus. And his countenance, your appearance is serene. It's calming. It will calm others. And then 10, you will die without a confused mind. You have a good death. And if you fail to attain liberation in this lifetime, then it says here, the next lifetime, you'll be the divine purpose. So these are qualities. Metta. So it's 1 o'clock. So we'll have a break, lunch break. Try to come back 15 minutes before break. Yeah. Including you Zoom people, try to come back 10, 15 minutes before start. Zoom has given bad habits, myself included. 2 seconds before time starts, you put on a shirt. Pants you're not even putting on, nobody can see, But it's bad habits, yeah. But if you are hurried, mind cannot focus. Yes. Okay, we take a break.